And we are like, hey everyone, welcome to another faculty session for the MICA program in digital marketing. I am Siddharth and I'll be moderating this session. Today we have with us Professor Siddharth Deshmukh, who needs no introduction. You might have already seen him plenty of times while covering the course content. Siddharth will be briefly covering the marketing in digital in the digital world, basically about media. So without further ado, I'll give it to Siddharth.
All right, so you've got two Siddharths this time. One person who's going to hassle me and ask me questions from all of you guys at the end of my lecture, and the second person here, a jet lagged individual who's moved from London to Pune and just came back yesterday. So forgive me if I am a little woozy and a little under the clock, as they say. But the whole idea should be that I just wanted to share my thoughts with you on something that I hold really dear. So you will see me as passionate as usual. I've developed a certain presentation for this session, which I'd like to take you through. Normally, I speak extempore, but the idea would be in a session like this, it's always good to know where you're going, and it'll also allow you to sort of understand what topic we are trying to cover. Now, I know what Siddharth said was that we are covering marketing in a digital world, and that's what we will be covering. But as you know, marketing in a digital world is a pretty large topic. So I would like to focus on a certain aspect of marketing in a digital world, which is specifically how media has changed and how every company, in my perspective, should be considering themselves as a media company first, and then whatever they do second. And I'll explain what I mean as we go along in this presentation. So this is how it's going to be. I'm going to talk, and unfortunately, you're going to listen for some time, and after that, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions from you. They will be asked to me by the other Siddharth, and I will try and answer them as much as I can. So here we go. I'm going to share a screen with you right now. So bear with me. I'm sharing the screen. So I hope that you can see this presentation well. I'm just about to start continuing. Siddharth, are we okay? Everything can be seen?
Yes, sir, we can see you. We can see your screen.
All right. Okay. So here we go. This is my lecture. This is on how digital has impacted media and how that has made all the difference of marketing in a digital world. Very quickly, before I get into any more slides, let's try to understand the difference, right, between digital marketing and marketing in a digital world. Now, whenever you learn about important stuff about Google AdWords or Facebook analytics or SEO and SEM, they all fall in the area of digital marketing. But marketing in a digital world is a slightly broader concept, and it actually means how do you actually do your marketing as a marketing professional in a world that is becoming rapidly more and more digital. So, in a world that is transforming in a digital way, how do you actually end up doing your marketing as a professional? So, it encompasses digital marketing, but it also goes beyond it and tries to make us look at, you know, things such as marketing techniques and also consumers in a slightly different way. So this is what it is. Now, what I'd like to do first is to actually look at who the changing consumer is and what her impact on the world actually is. So as I don't know if you guys can read the joke on the right side, but it's about a guy watching golf who's watching, he's watching coverage of other people watching golf. So viewing habits have really changed, right? They have completely become topsy turvy. And one of the things that I wanted to do in this lecture of mine was to actually talk about how viewing habits have changed, or have they changed really, and why do I think they have changed, and as a marketing professional, how should you kind of react to this change and kind of put it into your planning process and accept and kind of make a different marketing plan because of different viewing habits. The next thing I want to actually focus on is look at content development and how it has evolved. And content development has gone through a lot of changes. You've seen a lot in the modules that I cover. which is in, say, community, content, and communication, if I remember correctly. That's those are the modules that you go through. But I just wanted to say that most of the times companies are beginning to realize that their brands and their products, the differentiation is very little in today's world, because anything can be copied like this. Any service can be replicated, any product can be hacked, any value proposition is hardly ever unique for a sustained period of time. So therefore, companies have to consider themselves as media companies first and as content development companies, as much as they are about product and service. The moment we start looking at any company as a content development company, and content development as important as the rest of marketing, then you have a pathway in front of you which is quite different from the pathway that a traditional marketing plan would kind of encapsulate. So content development has changed, and it has changed dramatically, and it has changed quite irreversibly. So we shall look at what that kind of means and the way in which it has impacted media. And so, therefore, the last question: what does actually marketing need to do? So, one of the things that I'd like to say right up front is that most of the times, what tends to happen, and I've seen it across a lot of digital agencies, marketing schools, and marketing professionals, that even though the world has changed and become digital, marketing professionals are still not able to recognize the complete sophistication and the changed thinking patterns of a customer, which means that the customer is sophisticated enough to, we all know this, right? The customer is sophisticated enough to go to the loo whenever there is an ad going on traditional television. The customer is sophisticated enough to not click on your banner ad. The customer is sophisticated enough to actually make a blind spot of all the YouTube ads that come up, or skip ads. In fact, I've done a paper recently with MICA in which I looked at the YouTube 5-second skip ad versus the YouTube 6-second unskippable ad, and an overwhelming majority actually said that they hated the non-skippable ad. And I was like, okay, for 1 second, for just 1 second, people are so pissed off that they don't want to actually, kind of see that extra second of advertising before it goes. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that it is not about the 1 second. It is about the illusion of control that any customer has, and any format that forces me to watch advertising is a complete no-no. So that's the main point that I would like to make. Marketing in a digital world means the acceptance of marketing professionals for the sophistication of marketing. For the sophistication of customers. So those were the three main points that I wanted to touch on: how viewing habits have changed and what the impact is, how has content development evolved, and what does marketing actually need to do in order to survive with such a sophisticated customer. So let's kind of move ahead from here. Well, here we are. Your device is always on, mind is always off. I am willing to bet that as you're watching this particular, presentation of mine, or this lecture of mine, maybe your phone is there in the corner. Maybe some television might be going on. Maybe somebody else might be yelling something out to you. Your mind is already off. And it is this mind that any person who's trying to communicate, like me with you in this lecture, but any marketing professional to a consumer, to deal with a mind that is always off and with a device that is always on. So basically, welcome to short attention span theater. When I joined the corporate world after I graduated out of MICA as a student, I was the first batch of MICA, so 94 to 96. My first job was with Sony Entertainment Television. And what happened was that I joined Sony Entertainment Television, and I understood a concept called appointment television. Now, that was very strange because it said that on Wednesday, you make an appointment with your television to watch horror. On Thursday, you watch drama. On Friday, you watch something else. On Saturday. And we made a big deal out of it. And it was very much part of our marketing plan. you make an appointment with your TV. Now compare and contrast that was about, let's say, 20 odd years back, more than 20 years back, to now, which is all about live streaming and podcasts and YouTube channels. We have come a really long way. We've come a long way wherein we now refuse to be dictated to by channels for the kind of content consumption that we do. So that is the kind of journey of sophistication that the customer has done. So that's point number one. Point number two is the reduced attention span and the increased choice. Now let's look at what we mean by reduced attention span. I would like to kind of take your attention to a little thing called our human brain. And our human brain is actually has a lot of different significant parts to it. One part which totally focuses on attention is based on rational logical thinking, which is our prefrontal cortex. The second part of our brain, and I'm just simplifying things to an alarming amount, but just bear with me over here as I talk to you. The second part of our brain is all about emotional management. So it's about how your emotions connect to a certain situation. Now, what has tended to happen is that your attention span and my attention span has been compromised because we are being seduced, or the emotional part of our brain has been seduced or is being seduced continuously by very intelligent marketers. So we also need to be very intelligent marketers and need to understand, how do I actually catch somebody's attention when they are being seduced by other marketers emotionally, whenever they are kind of being on, when their device is always on and connected to the digital world. Now, let's talk a little bit about uh, something that I also wanted to cover while we are talking of attention span before I forget, and that's about binge watching. Now, this is an interesting phenomenon because it actually kind of goes against the fact that you have a reduced attention span. Now, binge watching, as you and I both know and have done, is done on Netflix or Amazon Prime, wherein you see the whole complete series of Sacred Games, staying up throughout the night, and sleep is the only enemy over here as far as Netflix is concerned. So then, how and where does your shortened attention span actually come into play when you have the ability to pay attention to such a large amount of Netflix viewing? So now this brings me to my uh, my deeper point about the fact that increased choice has not only reduced attention span, but it is also making sure that the customer is giving enough attention to content which he wants to give attention to. And content which he wants to give attention to is certainly Sacred Games, is certainly maybe the Jack Ryan series on Amazon Prime, but it is becoming lesser and lesser of the conventional television programs, which we shall see in the next slide. Another aspect which is deeply connected to the reduced attention span and increased choice is the social consumption of content. What do I mean by social consumption of content? So I don't know how many of you have heard of the Joe Rogan podcast, but it is a pretty amazing podcast which has millions and millions of views and a lot of followers. And Joe Rogan, who's a stand-up comedian, keeps interviewing people of different kinds of people. He interviews quantum physicists one day, he interviews MMA wrestlers the other day. He talks to varied kind of people, and he has longish discussions on these, which are then put up on YouTube. This podcast is put up on YouTube, and this podcast and YouTube is shared on Instagram, and it's shared on Facebook. And that's how you come to know of the Joe Rogan podcast. It's because somebody else has spoken about it on social media, and we will learn about how social media influence actually has a significant impact on the consumption of content. Just recently, I was going through a Facebook feed and somebody said, "Oh, I am glad I did not see Mirzapur. It has fried." I heard that from a friend of mine that it has fried his brain, and thank God for that. Now, just imagine the impact of a statement like this that comes out on social media. You're going to believe your friend. You're not going to believe any amount of advertising that comes through. I could also read in the comment stream saying, "Oh, thank God you said that. I was going to watch it, so many hours saved. I'll watch this instead." This is the sort of competition that any uh, marketer in a digital world actually has to contend with. The fact that consumers and their friends actually can be your enemies, right? Or your friends, as we will soon realize. And the fourth is obviously technological disruption. We've all heard about mobile TV. We've heard about mobile smartphones and smart TVs. But and we've also heard about augmented reality, and we've also heard of virtual reality coming soon. But have we realized the kind of impact that your smartphone already has on your behavior as compared to your behavior, even say 5 years back or 10 years back? Let me explain through a significant example. In 2007, the Time Time magazine, I think, if I'm not mistaken, said that there's a new word called pizzled, which is actually coming into the gestalt, the vocabulary that people are using. And pizzled is a combination of being pissed off and puzzled. And what does pissed off and puzzled mean? It means that whenever you're talking, and this is 2007, mind you, this is quite a long way off. This is when you're talking to somebody and he gets a call on his BlackBerry and he talks on the BlackBerry while you're trying to have a conversation with him. Now, just think about it. In 2007, there was BlackBerry and people were getting phone calls and talking. Now, just see how different the world is. BlackBerry is gone. Okay. The word pizzled is not there anymore because we've all accepted that this is the way in which we are all going to behave with each other. And thirdly, nobody calls anybody anymore. We are all texting each other. And that sometimes is even more irritating when you are making a sort of pitch to somebody. People kind of continuously texting when there is some kind of what you think in your mind, some important communication that you're giving to the other person. So technological disruption has already happened to a large extent in our minds, which actually means that if I have to pull all these 4 points that I have put together on this slide, it actually means that there are two things that every marketer needs to keep in mind. One is, how do I manage the attention of my consumer? Okay. And second is, so that's attention management. And the second is attention seduction. How do I make sure that I am the person who seduces my consumer rather than somebody else? And that somebody else is not necessarily competition. It can be something completely different. It can be, the consumer's friend. It can be a television program. It can be some other content which he finds or she finds arresting. So please keep in mind these two terms, attention seduction and attention management, because these are the things that you need to keep in mind for marketing in a digital world. Let me move on to the next slide. This is where I just wanted to talk about media and how much it has changed. Now, if you look at OTT channels, right, which means all digital channels like Hotstar, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, and the others, this is a very, very big market that's going on. I just wanted to talk of a few trends that are coming up, and I call it Sarabhai versus Superwoman, and you'll soon know why. Most people are moving away from the Sarabhai format to the Superwoman format. Now, what do I mean by that? Does that mean Sarabhai versus Sarabhai was or is a lousy program? Not at all. It's an excellent program, eminently watchable. I'm a big fan. However, it's Superwoman that is catching people's uh, eyes and ears and heart and soul, and YouTubers like Superwoman and influencers on Instagram. So most of the times what tends to happen is, if an OTT channel, if a digital channel is going to put up catch up content, which is like, suppose there is a program that's already there on mainstream television and it is put on OTT channels, it is not going to really capture people's attention as much as exclusive content is. So therefore, Sacred Games is going to work way better than a regurgitated television series that is again put on an OTT channel hoping for views. The only exception to this is cricket, because cricket is live, and that's why Hotstar is where Hotstar is today. But Netflix and Amazon Prime are certainly the two leading players because they are investing so much in that exclusive content. As a marketer, what do you need to understand? You need to understand that whenever you are creating content for a consumer, there is no point in regurgitating old content. You need to create content which is connected to your brand and which is exclusive rather than catch up. Let's look at the second point. The second point is original versus redistributed. Now, when I say original, it means Netflix originals, right? Which means sacred games. Redistributed means Netflix putting up something which has already been there on BBC or Disney. Now, think about it from a marketer's perspective. Original series means that people who are early adopters and innovators are always going to flock to original series. That's how the Game of Thrones got so popular. That's how Sacred Games got so popular. That's how so many other series like Stranger Things got so popular because original series always attract the early adopters and influencers. Redistributed series always attract the early and late majority and at a very slow pace. So whenever you are again either connecting to content as a marketer, if you're sponsoring a series or if you're trying to create content, just think in terms of creating original content. Now, how do you create original content around your brand? You should, as we have discussed in the main classes, think in terms of starting a movement or connecting to a trend, and then the hashtag Me Too happens. But if you do it in a fake or kind of wishy-washy manner, people kind of read through it and don't really connect to your brand being connected to the Me Too movement that was created. So keep that in mind that the customer is very, very sophisticated. Now let's talk of long form versus short form. So when I say long form content, it means like really long content, really particularly, um, 2 hours, 3 hours, 1 hour, half an hour, and short form content. Now, a lot of people say, Are, you have short attention span, so short form content will work. Well, not necessarily true, as we spoken earlier in the binge watching example. Because if you look at the binge watching example, whenever somebody is creating original, exclusive, and really arresting content, which is long form, people will go for long form content as well, as long as they don't have the boredom factor connected to it, which is why the Joe Rogan podcast, which I spoke about a little earlier, is so popular. And so is, let's take a completely different example. I forget the name of the guy who writes, but he writes long form content on the internet. I think it is Mark Manson. Yeah, maybe Mark Manson, but I'm forgetting the other guy's name. He writes long form. He's written a long ass article on Elon Musk and Tesla, and which makes for fascinating reading. And a lot of people have actually gone through so much of content on the internet. Now, where does your attention span go here if it is such long form content, and what is going on, and why short form content, which your brand is creating, being completely ignored? Just think about all the points that we have made so far, exclusive, original, and also remember the two terms that we spoke of: attention seduction and attention management. The moment you make long form content which is seductive, okay, and which is very natural and which is connected to a sophisticated customer, and the customer doesn't feel that he's being sold something, then it tends to work much stronger, right? And it doesn't harm you to actually put up social media influencers in the mix, because then they give the veracity of the claim. However, just ensure that you don't do some kind of celebrity management thing with social media influencers, but use the social media influencers who are genuine, with their own formed communities. The last point I want to make on this slide is the fact that this is a change of business model that we are seeing. It is completely business model driven. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that if you look at traditional media and the way in which the business model is, it is punctuated by advertising, which essentially means that you are going to have advertising interrupt content. So, which which then in turn influences the way in which content is created, which means that some news anchor has to shout out and encapsulate something in 3 minutes, and then you break into an ad, and then again it comes. So you know that there is a certain predictable nature of the content that you're going to see, because the business model is driven by advertising. That is what the sophisticated customer is rejecting more and more. That doesn't mean it's completely going out of the window, but the the bigger form or the change in emphasis is going to, hey, I want to see this kind of content, I want to see some really good actors, put it out there in a mini series, which is why the BBC's Bodyguard became so famous, and which is why Sacred Games worked so well in the Indian context. And the reason is because their business model is driven through the customer paying the channel whatever it's worth, and not involving the advertiser. Think about the music industry and the way in the music industry has completely changed because of the same factor. The same factor is, I am willing to pay for one song by my favorite artist, but I'm not willing to pay for a lousy album that is created by a media company just because it wants to increase album sales. So, which is why iTunes succeeds. I'm willing to pay for one song. So the business model is very different, and which is why uh, iTunes works, but very few long albums actually work in the music context. I hope things are clear about. I've done a deep dive into in this slide about media, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone is on board so far. Because now the next slide, where we are going to go to, is exactly this. So, how does one, as a marketing professional, look at, you know traversing this journey? Now, you have two choices. If you look at the famous chasm strategy, you have innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. That's how you typically classify customers in a product life cycle. It means that the way in which your product is introduced and how time treats the product over, or how the marketplace treats the product, you have one particular place called the chasm, which happens, you know, between innovators and early adopters. And then there's the tipping point that Malcolm Gladwell talks about, is that when you cross the chasm is when you hit the product life cycle, and then you hit marketing gold, and everybody starts buying into your product, service, or value proposition. Now, marketing in a digital world actually kind of challenges that. Do we cross the chasm every single time, or do we just simply go horizontal, which we call market skimming? Here is where things get interesting. I would like to take the Netflix example once again. Netflix did not bother about the whole product life cycle. What Netflix did, on uh, on the other hand, was it actually moved across markets. So after looking and securing innovators and early adopters in one geography, which was the US, it moved towards Europe, towards another geography, and then it moved towards Asia, another geography. Asia obviously divided into various sub geographies like India and China, etc. And it kept going that way. So over a period of time, there was a certain demographic and psychographic which was very similar that Netflix actually connected to across the world. So if you look at any social media, whether it's Facebook, and if you look at things such as Netflix or YouTube, which is a mix between social media and actually a content company or a content platform, all of them have actually followed this path, which is they have forgotten about the early majority, late majority, and laggards for a large amount of time, but just got innovators and early adopters across geographies, because they believe that customers need to be defined differently. So customers cannot be defined only as customers of a country. Non-customers, which is customers from a different country, can also become my customers if I push market boundaries. Here is where things get really interesting. And I just wanted to talk about how the tipping point, which is dealt. See, tipping point is a very famous thing. This is how you go ahead, and the chasm strategy is something that we've talked about. But here is an alternative strategy, and this is the kind of change that we are seeing about marketing in a digital world. Does that mean that you need to avoid the conventional PLC and the way in which you penetrate a market? No, not necessarily. But make a conscious choice about whatever you're trying to do. Are you going, are you crossing the chasm or are you going horizontal? Just make sure that you connect and resonate with what your brand actually stands for and do exactly that. One thing that I would like to tell you is from a personal perspective. I have taught in India, various institutes across India. I have taught in the US and I have taught in Europe. And what I find about the people that I teach, typically MBAs or maybe even undergrads or at that level, is all of them watch Netflix and all of them are talking about the same language. Everybody talks of Stranger Things in the same way. And I got to understand how real it is, that how the world is actually global and how customers are so similar in spite of so many cultural differences that are there between the cultures of, say, India and uh, Italy or the US or the UK even. They're all Netflix customers first and then they're countrymen later on. However, you need to be very careful about your brand. If it's not something that can travel well across cultural boundaries, make sure that you go the conventional route of crossing the chasm. Now I come to my last slide, which is about, so how do I climb Mount Digital? This is where I kind of um, take from the 4 action framework, which is a blue ocean strategy. If anybody has not read Blue Ocean Strategy, I would really recommend them reading Blue Ocean Strategy. That also is true for the Crossing the Chasm book, which is written by Jeffrey Moore. Blue Ocean Strategy is written by a couple of well-known professors. Um, what this 4 action framework says is that if you look at any product, service, or value proposition, which also will include the brand that you're working for as a marketer, and if you can look at the value proposition carefully, and if you can eliminate a few things, if you can raise a few things, if you can reduce a few things, and if you can create a few things, then you will be ready for marketing that value proposition in a digital world. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's understand what I mean by that. Let me take a non-digital example first. And this comes straight from the Blue Ocean Strategy. In the 1990s or even early 2000s, the circus industry was struggling. It was struggling because animal rights activists were fighting against animals to be used for public display. So there was a lot of pushback on that. Circus conditions were pathetic. It was very difficult to manage things. The smell of shit, animal shit everywhere. People were getting a lot of different options for entertainment, like video games and the rest of it. And as a result, the revenues were falling. In such a scenario, there was a company called Le Cirque du Soleil, which is a French Canadian company, which came up with a completely new form of circus, wherein it completely eliminated the animal acts. It reduced the dependence on clowns. It actually raised the standard of seating, and it actually introduced alcoholic beverages and foods which are sophisticated, and it created a theme for each of their circuses, and it appealed to non-customers, which meant that it appealed to um, adults rather than children. Now, in such a manner, the way in which they used a framework like this to create a completely new offering, they ensured that they were relevant in this world. Now, are they a digital company? No, they're not. But are they in a digital world? Yes, they are. So now let us see if you can also look at your brand, or if you look at your any other brand and look at the content strategy or the marketing strategy that you create for making sure that your brand is marketed well by using a framework like this. What are the things that you will eliminate? What are the things that you will raise? What are the things that you will reduce? What are the things that you will create? So perhaps for your brand, you will eliminate any kind of push advertising. Quite possible. It's quite possible that for your brand, you might reduce the amount of dependence you have on celebrities. It is quite possible for your brand that you raise your continuous conversation with people on Twitter. It is quite possible that you create a movement like Nike did for ensuring that people are more connected. By the way, did you guys see the wonderful position that Nike has taken with that athlete who actually bended down during the US national anthem? Nike actually sacrificed a lot of customers but gained a lot of traction and a lot of non-customers and customers because they supported this particular athlete in his show of protest for the cause that he was standing for. Now, this is the sort of uh, conversation that any intelligent marketer needs to have in order to market a successful brand in today's digital world. I'd like to stop with this and thank all of you for a patient listen. And now, what I would like to actually do is to maybe just switch back and say hi to everybody again. I have finished my part of the conversation, and now this is where I will leave it to you and question and answers. Thank you.
Yeah, Siddharth, I have a few questions that had come in, like while you're explaining the topics.
Sure.
We'll start with the first one from Karan Nanda.
Okay.
He asked, how can digital marketing be used in B2B for C environment? Could you kindly share one example on this?
How can digital marketing be used in?
B2B for C environment.
Sorry, say that again.
B2B for C.
B2B for C. Okay. So there can be many examples. I'd like to first figure out what we are trying to cover over here, right? Now, when we are looking at B2B for C, the first thing that we need to actually understand is what is the movement that we are talking about? Is there a genuine trend that we are actually connecting to? So most of marketers actually start thinking from a provider centric perspective. This is my product. These are the companies that I'm actually selling to for these customers, right? Perhaps that is the wrong way of dealing with the problem. Perhaps the right way of dealing with the problem is looking at, okay, what are the end customers connecting to as a trend and as a movement? And as a company, how can I connect to the trend and movement first? Then look at co-opting the B part of it, the B partner of it into that movement and make it a concerted drive. I hope I've answered that.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Varun Nipin asks, I quote, "Gentlemen, you had my curiosity, now you have my attention." End quote. As marketers, don't you only involve in the former, and the latter part is taken care by content creators?
I think that is kind of an absolution of responsibility by a good marketer, because I always look at awareness as a poor cousin of demand creation. So if you look at awareness creation, it is just the first step. But my question to anybody who actually poses this question to me is, if I create awareness, I don't necessarily create demand. But if I create demand, I will automatically create awareness. Awareness comes along for the ride when I create demand. So the fact is that any communication that I am developing has to be creating that seductive pull. Obviously, it will create awareness. The content development is should not be divorced from marketing at all. Content development is the mainstay of marketing.
All right, and moving on to the next question. How is Netflix mix of social media and content platform?
May I just add to this, because the questioner also mentioned, what's the name of the questioner, by the way?
Varun.
Varuna.
Yeah, Varun.
Varun.
Yeah.
Another point that I'd like to make is, if you look at curiosity, right? Curiosity is something which is a job well done, but just half done. If you create curiosity, it means that you're creating a spike in marketing terms, right? But if what we've understood about the sophisticated customer and the fact that so many other people are seducing the customer all the time, is that you need to have continuous presence across the life cycle for this customer, right? So only creating curiosity, and how long are you going to create curiosity about? Yeah, people are going to get bored. So you need to have something that goes beyond curiosity and something that sustains interest, and that is marketing's job. That is not anybody else's job. Yeah, sorry, go on.
All right, yeah. Moving on to the next one. How is Netflix mix of social media and content platform? Isn't it only a content platform?
Okay, Netflix is a content platform, 100%. It is not a social media platform at all. But the way in which the ecosystem works between Netflix, and the point that I was trying to make was not that Netflix is a social media platform. It is a 100% content platform. But the way in which Netflix's ecosystem works with social media and also conventional media is where the beauty is for the traditional, for the new age marketer. Now, if you look at a very interesting phenomenon, and I'd like to explain that in a little detail, if you don't mind. Who's the questioner?
Sucharita Pradhan.
Sucharita.
Yeah.
Sucharita. You know, for the first time, Netflix actually put up hoardings for Sacred Games when it actually started marketing for Sacred Games in India, and I think it was one of the first times.
So we kind of lost you there. Can you hear us?
Hi, I think I lost you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Okay, no, yeah.
am I with you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So if you look at Netflix and the way in which, hi, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. We can hear you.
All right. So if you look at Netflix and the way in which it actually was presenting Sacred Games to uh, a new audience, it was done as if it's a movie. It was sold as if it was a movie. It had a massive amount of star presence, and it was something which was very clearly uh, understood as a mini movie rather than a big series. Right.
Yeah. So I'll move on to the next one.
Sure.
Yeah. Vikas asked, like in the past 10 years, many startups in the country became popular because of disruptive pricing, technological innovation, and aggressive digital marketing strategies. Can you share some references on case studies?
Um, I can share some. First of all, I'll tell you what didn't work. What didn't work was pouring money down the tube with a very aggressive digital marketing strategies like housing.com. That certainly didn't work. Okay, so we all know that that was money poured down the drain. In fact, what I would say is that aggressive digital marketing strategies are the ones which are using a combination of very smartly used money, but also connecting to deeper trends and movements. So if you look at any brand that has become part of the cultural conversation, and you can name any one of them, as startups in India, Paytm can be one of them, or you can have, let's say, which Oyo Rooms, to be honest, or Stay Uncle, or any of those things which became part of the social conversation, were the startups that actually succeeded. Very few actually succeeded with just pouring advertising money down the drain. A notable exception to this, because we should also always look at exceptions, is Flipkart. Because if you look at Flipkart and the way in which it grew, it did grow because of the speed at which it was doing advertising. But again, the way in which it did advertising was quite different. It involved kids in it, and the whole conversation was quite different from a lot of the advertising campaigns that a lot of traditional branding companies were doing.
All right. I'll move on to the next one.
Sure.
Yeah, people is asking, apart from email marketing, is there any other scope for digital marketing in the B2B e-com environment? Since none of the consumers are on social media.
Okay, so in B2B market, who's Vipul? Vipul
Yeah.
seems to be interested in B2B marketing. So okay, so here's the answer to this. I think email marketing comes at a place in the marketing funnel which is very closer to push. Now, if you have to create pull for at a B2B level, what do you do? I disagree with the fact that there is no social media for B2B, because what we tend to forget is that B2B is eventually full of people, yeah. And these people can be, HR managers or people who are buying stuff, and they're still on Facebook, they're still on LinkedIn, they're still on, Quora, they're still on so many other social or quasi social media. I don't think that we should have any kind of strategy which does not create pull on those media, even though it is a B2B thing. It needs to be well thought through, and you will go across different strategies for different brands. But I do think that only looking at email marketing means you're only focusing on probably push, because people don't get pulled very easily through email.
All right. I'm moving on to the next one. Saurabh is asking, like, I am from an alternative healthcare industry. What strategies we need to employ to start getting leads?
To start getting hits,
Yeah.
he has to pay me in dollars if I can answer that question. But sort of one of the things that, honestly speaking, you should look at is to understand what value is your alternative, what value is your star alternative medicine brand or a lifestyle brand actually selling, and actually look at what trends are going on. So I don't really know the details of what brands you're selling or what you're working on or whatever. But what I would certainly like to do is use the trends that are already working for you instead of fighting an uphill battle. So we right now know that everyone's into naturopathy, everyone's into meditation, everyone's into so look at those trends. Then the next thing is understand your community that is going to make sure that your brand gets propagated. Understand the influencers within that community and establish a one-to-one dialogue with them, and look at how they can actually help you promote your product. Do not offer them money or any kind of financial reward. Do not make it into an MV scheme. Make sure that they're connected to the values that your brand represents. That's all I can say at this stage.
All right. All right. Next question is from Rajesh. What do you see as an immediate challenge for digital marketing agencies?
The immediate challenge for digital marketing agencies is uh, digital platforms. So if you look at digital platforms such as Facebook or YouTube or Google or LinkedIn, they are finding superior ways of ensuring that clients reach out to customers without any intervention from digital marketing agencies. Digital marketing agencies are traditionally, now, and I'm going to say traditional, actually they're new, but I'm going to say traditionally focused on techniques which are about getting hits, views, push, likes. And if you get into that sort of metric calculation, you're going to become a cropper in today's world. What digital marketing agencies should know is how to talk to platforms, and not only to customers, but how to talk to platforms and ensure great collaborative partnerships with them.
Okay, I'm moving on to the next one. Sumit is asking, like, how do you explain the MMT? MMT, I believe, is talking about Make My Trip. How do you explain the Make My Trip digital marketing campaign and strategies?
Okay, Sumit, I'm sorry, I wouldn't want to comment on any specific brand like this. because it's not fair to the brand. And secondly, we have all been out of the strategy room, so there must have been a lot of good thinking people. So if I start criticizing Make My Trip just like this, or if I start praising Make My Trip just like this, it's not going to really help. What may help is to look at any strategy's evolution. You should be looking at the context that is unseen. Let me explain by what I mean. A lot of times companies actually I'll take another different example. So if you look at Airbnb, which is again in the similar thing, if you're told people that, will you allow a stranger to come into my house and live in for money, people would have said you're nuts and it's never going to work, and that sort of shit doesn't work anywhere, and please stop this nonsense, and nobody would have funded it. But if you look at what happened with Airbnb, it worked phenomenally well. So let's understand why it worked phenomenally well. And one of the reasons why it worked really well is because it came at a time of recession, which is when people were looking for the additional money, when people were actually looking at stretching things to make ends meet, especially in the US where Airbnb was started. A lot of strategies do not take underlying trends into account and do not make their bets based on underlying trends. So if you're in a brand which is focused on developing a strategy without looking at underlying trends, change your ways, is what I'm saying.
All right, all right. I'll move on to the next one. Ayan is asking, do you think that social media marketing slash digital advertising or marketing will overshadow TV commercial advertising within 5 to 10 years down the line? If you have to rank between 1 to 5, which medium will you rank one?
Okay, Ayan, first part of the question first. If digital marketing continues to develop communication which is like traditional media or like traditional advertising, it is not going to go very far. If digital marketing, on the other hand, understands how to communicate to the customer through sophisticated content development strategies, okay, it is going to overshadow traditional media formats and traditional advertising. Now it depends upon the way in which people respond to this challenge. But if I was if I was developing digital communication, I would probably spend equal amounts of time, money, and effort, not just developing campaigns that run on digital, but also look at actually establishing conversations that run across the year on digital channels and also on non-digital channels for people who are in a digital world. And these are the brands that will succeed. Now, in answering your second part of the question, can you repeat that question? The second part, Siddharth? 1 to 5.
The second part is like, if you have to rank between 1 to 5, which medium will you rank?
Which medium will I rank for what?
We do rank number one. Like which medium will you rank number one?
Oh, which medium will I rank number one?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will look at YouTube. Okay, I will look at Instagram. After that, then I will look at podcasts. Okay, then I will look at Facebook, and then I will look at Google. I'm looking at the future, not now. Okay.
All right, all right. We still have a few more questions, so we can take it up quickly. Yeah, Rituparna is asking, like, I'm interested in knowing how content marketing and social media marketing can be utilized in corporate social responsibility sector.
The Rituparna, you are actually literally sitting on a pot of gold, because the corporate social responsibility is directly connected to the underlying trends and movements that I keep banging on about, which actually means that you have the ability to connect your brand and make it meaningful. Now, the only challenge that you have is that you should not make it fake sounding or hokey. Okay. What you have to do is actually look into what is trending on Twitter. You have to actually look at what is going on and then become a meaningful and significant part of it. Don't try and own something that you don't. Try and be like, um, you know, uh, there was a wonderful statement that I'd read. Don't treat your brand as if it's a lake that has to be protected from all sides. Treat it like a river which is continuously flowing. So when you start treating your brand like a river that's continuously flowing, you will just be able to navigate it, okay, rather than trying to protect it. So treat it like that and create a movement or belong to a movement that is most meaningful and significant.
Okay, I'm moving to the next one. Ishdeep is asking, did Netflix in its initial journey have a plan, or is it something that they evolved riding the wave? What do you reckon?
I reckon that they kept pivoting till they reached the right plan. And that's the true story for any startup. Nobody gets born with the perfect strategy and idea in a digital world. What you have to do is fail fast, experiment about whatever you're trying to market, understand what is working, understand what is not, ditch what is not working, move ahead. Do not create a strategy for a year. Create a strategy for a month, maybe at the max. Okay, even for a week. Do A/B testing and move on. And Netflix is specifically good at this.
All right. Rushika is asking, like, what are the best ways to market mobile app for book summary readers? My product is similar to Blinkist.
Okay, first of all, I would try to figure out how Blinkist is doing its marketing. Okay, I try to understand from best practices. Secondly, I would uh, truly recommend. See, I can't give a strategy within like a 30-second strategy to anybody. But what I can certainly recommend is not to look at your product as a product, but to try and understand what job it fulfills in the user's mind and what is it replacing. Maybe start off with those questions and you might get the cornerstone of a good strategy.
Okay. Here's a follow-up question from Vipul.
Okay.
Like, as you mentioned, housing.com poured us money down the drain. Is it right to generalize that any large campaign not aimed at creating a brand recall and only for lead generation is wasted?
Not at all. I don't think it is right to generalize anything. But having said that, I think that we are living marketing in a digital world entails the fact that you need to be very nimble on your feet and understand what is working and what is not, even for a big ad campaign. And understand that you cannot lock down monies the way in which housing.com did for its advertising without having immediate impact on some indicators. And this is where I think it was a problem at many levels. It was not just marketing's fault. I think the problem also existed in terms of really truly differentiated product, etc. So let's not get into where housing failed, but the question that you're asking is relevant. Should you completely ditch the large advertising campaign that is done for brand recall in a digital world? I would say tread very cautiously. That's the only advice I will give.
All right. Nihar asked a very good question here. Like, can any mass product completely rely on only digital marketing to be successful, or they need to have a blend of digital marketing along with traditional marketing?
Nihal,
Nihar, yeah.
Nihar, good question. As I told you, I don't teach digital marketing. I teach marketing in a digital world, which essentially means in this world that we are in with digitally connected consumers, what is the most correct way of doing marketing? Do that. Whether it's traditional or digital is secondary. Like for example, the Sacred Games thing that I was speaking about, they did hoardings, which is non-digital, and they did it to attract digital. But what a brilliant strategy, because it is capturing people in traffic jams with smartphones, with connectivity, looking at a hoarding which is completely non-digital. So that's how I would encourage you to look at things.
Okay. Akansha is asking, like, what is the conventional route of crossing the chasm? What is the chasm really?
The chasm is basically there are Akansha. Good question. Very short and quick answer. You'll have to read the book for the longer one. There are people who are early adopters and innovators for any product or service category, right? They're the people who stand in line to get your first day, first show. Wale jo log hote hain na, those are the guys who are your early adopters and innovators. Now, after you get those guys who instinctively get your product, there are the people who are risk averse And there are people who are not interested in your product, but demographically and psychographically should be buying your product. They are your early majority and late majority. Then there are laggards, who are people who are the last to move in any product life cycle. Now, the chasm is a hypothetical gap between the people who absolutely, completely, instinctively get your product and people who are risk averse enough to avoid looking at the benefits and their sense of inertia towards moving to your product. Any marketing professional's challenge is to cross this chasm from people who instinctively get your product to people who have that inertia or that risk averseness to not look at your product even though it makes sense to them.
Okay. Rohit is asking, if I have a property that is of 10 crore and above, what kind of channel should I consider to reach the right audience?
If I
Also, what kind of communication would work for me?
sorry, if I have a what?
If I have a property that is of 10 crore and above,
Okay. What
what kind of channel should I consider to reach to the right audience?
do you mean real estate? What I'm a little unclear about the question.
This, I think this he hasn't gotten that much specific, but I believe this is real estate. I'll ask Rohit to follow up on that. Rohit, if you can just be a little more specific if this is real estate. On the chat, I'll take it up. I'll move to the next one
Okay.
from Anil. Like after acquisition of Food Panda by Ola, Food Panda is giving vast discount to capture marketing. Does this work?
Okay. Again, having not been in the strategy room, I can hazard a guess.
Mhm.
And the guess that I hazard is it is going to be bloody difficult. And the reason why it's difficult is that you're discounting something. And does that discounting actually help you go and succeed in the long run? I don't know. Amazon, by the way, has proven that it can succeed by using a strategy like this. So a lot of people are on Amazon's tail, trying to understand how Amazon managed market valuation, which was going up in spite of having year after year losses because of subsidizing whatever they're doing. But what they forget to understand is Amazon had its fundamentals and analytics very correct. And they knew where they were going. They had a vision about what they were trying to replace, which a lot of these companies may or may not have. I understand that it's a bit of a cryptic answer, but this is all I can say at this stage.
Okay, okay. Coming back to Rohit's question, yes, that was of real estate. If he has a property that is of 10 crore and above, what kind of channel should he consider to
I
reach the right audience?
I think one of the so property is about location, location, location. And if the so the value of the property is in the location. If the value of the property is not in the location, Rohit has a problem because no kind of digital marketing is going to help a bad product, right? But let's assume that the location is good. If the location is good, digital marketing should be looking at connecting to early adopters and innovators. I think that is the key idea for real estate companies, to connect to early adopters and innovators through digital marketing and then switch to traditional marketing to connect to the rest of the market.
Okay. Nidhi is asking, like, what kind of choice Indian middle and small sized companies have in terms of going or not going digital? How is digital marketing impacting the budgets of these companies?
Nidhi, I think the smaller you are, the faster you need to go digital. So that's a very short and sweet answer to this. Nobody can escape. It's like about 100 years before, Nidhi, you know, people were wondering, oh, should we put electricity in our stores or should we not have electricity? Not 100, maybe 150 years back. It was a no-brainer. You had to use electricity. It helped everything. The same way with digital. So I think the smaller you are, the more dependent you are on digital effectively, of course, rather than traditional marketing.
Okay. Arul is asking, like, how artificial intelligence will help in digital marketing?
Wow, that's a big one. But I think the digital marketing is going to be first connected to augmented reality and second to virtual reality. What we don't understand is how artificial intelligence is already helping digital marketing. The platforms that I was talking about, Facebook, YouTube, Google, LinkedIn, etc. to actually have a very, very deep understanding of how customers are. Artificial intelligence is already targeting you, your sister, your father, your brother, your mother, your wife in ways that you can never imagine based upon their context. It is already there embedded in these platforms. For individual brands to actually recognize the way in which artificial intelligence is used is the first step for any brand. The second is to figure out, acha, do I need to do something which is different from what is already being done? Using data intelligently is also key. Do not make decisions completely based on blind reading of data. Use data and then use intuition. So don't use artificial intelligence uh, without using human intelligence. Yeah, at this stage is all I can say.
Okay. Samita is asking the anarchy and speed of responses in patterns of digital marketing. How do you make sure you're on the right side of the law? Who owns the legal implication in this case? A digital marketer or the company slash brand?
Wow. Okay. And that's a pretty deep question. The honest answer is I don't know. I don't think anybody can answer that question in a general way. It has to be specifics. It has to be about a specific brand, about a specific context, about a specific legal thing, about whether you cross the line or not cross the line. It depends upon the country you're operating in. It is very, very difficult to understand that a question.
Okay, we'll just take two more questions and we'll call it a wrap.
Okay.
Mishika is asking, in the digital marketing world, how has event-based campaigns helped the companies? Recently done by Netflix for Narcos Mexico and Amazon Prime for Mirzapur.
I think it's worked by and large well if the product is good. If Mirzapur is shitty, then no kind of event marketing is going to help. But that's true for traditional marketing. If Thugs of Hindustan is shitty, Thugs of Hindustan is not going to work, right? So let's go beyond bad products and let's try to understand marketing. I think event-based marketing allows you to, for people who have gone through the Hero Hub and the hygiene thing that we've spoken about in your classes, right? Event is your hero. So an event is the hero part of the spike in your marketing thing that needs to work. But it should be supported by a continuous stream of post and pre-event activities that slowly wean the customer away only from being event-based.
Okay, last question that we're taking for today's session from Preetham. This has relevance in India, but yeah, has the European General Data Protection Regulation, which is GDPR, has any influence on digital marketing strategies on social media?
100%. I think that the fact that you are being forced to look at the fact that you are now a data point for Facebook and you're acknowledging it, okay, and you're becoming aware of it, and you're being told about what those standards are, is going to make a massive difference to the amount of fake news, the lessening of fake news that comes on your news feed. It's going to make a massive amount of difference to the kind of data that is shared voluntarily by you to the company. It is going to have a legal impact on big companies in order not to become monopolies. You've seen Google and Facebook being, fined so many billions of dollars across countries. This is a good movement in my view because it allows for the breakup of a market and it allows for new companies to come up with things and to challenge existing monopolies that these big companies have become. So it will impact the market like India as well. Some Indian startup can come up and challenge Google or Facebook, and we can live up to that reality. It's a good answer to end this session with, I think.
Yeah. We can end the session. I'd like to thank Professor Siddharth for sharing his valuable insights today. And yeah, I think he's taken up plenty of questions. I think half of the session were with pretty good questions that had come in.
No, I really would say that these questions have challenged me. They were very good questions. I hope that I've answered some of them at least well. If I haven't answered any question specifically well, please write to me, and I would be more than happy to take this dialogue further. I've enjoyed having this interaction. It also shows the amount of questions also shows that you guys, the attention span that we were talking of was not so reduced in this lecture, which is good. Thank you so much for being with me and indulging me in this time that I spent with you.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
All right. Take care.